So I grew up with the idea that every year in the winter you would get an amaryllis bulb in those boxes and you would plant it and it would miraculously bloom. And then, well, I knew a lot of people that just threw them away. And we're going to learn about how you take care of amaryllis, but also some of the misconceptions. So let's talk a little bit about what I have just found out is quite the misconception, which is the whole name Amaryllis.
That's an exact misconception because Amaryllis is a species that comes from South Africa. And when we get those bulbs that we get at Christmas time, they're actually of the genus hippeastrum. Hippeastrum is a Greek word, just like Amaryllis is a Greek word, but the hippeastrums come from South America.
Clearly, in terms of a house plant, among all the other house plants, this is one of your favorites, I can tell. So let's take a look at some of these and figure out what I'm looking at, because clearly I didn't learn much about them because they were thrown away. So I do know that this is one that wants to grow up.
This one is starting to come up and leaf out, and that's very typical of the hybrid, commonly named Amaryllis or hybrid hippeastrums. And they are a mix of different species. They have papery shelling to them. They grow bigger and bigger every year, and they should always be potted tightly and slightly deeply. And these ones will come into bloom usually by March, and they'll have the big red or white or now even yellow and orange flowers.
Oh, beautiful, because I do remember the red ones very favorably. Now, this seems to be the same one, but maybe the next step a little bit later. Looks like we're getting some blooms.
Exactly, Julie. This is the next step where either a red with stripes or a pink with stripes is going to come up. I have about 5 varieties that I like. I have Apple Blossom, I have Hercules, I have several others, and they're all doing well for me. This one's probably about 4 years old, this one's about 5 years old, and this one's going to have 2 flowers in one, and it's going to have them before the leaves. So that sometimes happens. Sometimes you get a leaf and a group of leaves up, and sometimes you get a flower first. That really depends on whether you're forcing the bulb the first year or you've been growing it for a while by putting it outside, bringing it back inside, which is what I do. Amaryllis-like light, hippeastrum-like to be in a range of environments, but most people err on having them get too much sun. They actually do better with slightly less sun, a little bit of partial shade. So they're the perfect plant. Even if they lose all their leaves, just stick them in between your other house plants. You don't want to overwater them. That's the main thing. What you always hear on the books is don't water the bulb. But what I find is that as long as you're in a colder environment near the window, they actually don't mind having, water once a week. And they do originally come from a wide range of environments, from tropical rainforests all the way to sandy beaches in South America. So they really bring a sense of a tropical vacation to me, when I think about them, because they've been everywhere before they came here. They grow, there's about 90 species from Mexico all the way down to Argentina. And in Argentina, you'll find some that grow in bogs. So those are water resistant. But the ones that grow on the beach, obviously, they're not getting much water just when it rains, and then they're free to flower. There's one thing that makes this different than Amaryllis, because Amaryllis, being from South Africa, really love dry summers and wet winters. And so they hardly will produce leaves unless they get a dry spell first and then some water. Most of your hippeastrums will be okay through the winter months and through the summer months too. Just keep them a little bit dry in the summer and fairly watered, and then especially well watered once they start sending up their bloom, so the blooms don't fade.
Okay, so a little dry, and then eventually start watering when they tell you that they're starting to grow.
Need some, yeah.
Okay, so you have this absolutely gorgeous flower right here, but I understand that these are not the same.
Exactly. So when we're talking about those many, many species, 90 species in the Americas, this is actually the butterfly amaryllis is a common name, and as a scientific name, it's hippeastrum papilio. Papilio means butterfly. So everyone's heard of, papillion. So this is related to that, and it's because it really sends out the larger petals to the sides and smaller petals down to the bottom. And of all hippeastrums, they always put their style, their pistil, downwards and then upwards. And that helps with the insects that come and pollinate them. And then you can see the anther sacs here. But this being a special species was sold at the Lawn and Garden Show. And I found it to be really easy to propagate. And it always doubles in number, so it's exponential. Once you get one, next year you have 2 or 3, and then soon you've got maybe 100. I don't know. And as a species, they're from the the Atlantic rainforest of Brazil, and they keep their leaves through both summer and winter. So I like them to fit in between my other houseplants.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we have another difference here that I hadn't completely realized. So this one's going to keep its leaves, but this one's not, correct?
For the most part, though sometimes a hybrid will keep its leaves. It really just depends on what kind of hybrid and how you're treating it. So remember that any hippeastrum will need a cold spell. So when we leave them out on a balcony or under a awning, that's the perfect environment because they're getting sun, but they're not getting too much water. And when you remember to water them, they're fine. And then if you leave them out through the fall, they get those chilly nights. And that's what resets the clock for them to flower. And sometimes lose their leaves. And especially if you've underwatered a bit, you'll lose leaves faster.
All right, so let's start taking a look at some of these different sizes that you have, because it sounds like you've been doing some propagating with them, and I want to know more about how that happens. So the tiniest one that you have over here, did you pull it off the side? Did you cut it off? Tell me, how did you get that little one?
This little guy got pulled off the side of a large mother plant, probably the size of this one over here. And unlike some amaryllis, they're not fussy when you repot them. And they'll just sit there and grow in between your other houseplants. You can even add another houseplant as you go up one pot in size. And then you finally get to one that is probably likely to bloom its first time. This one is probably a first time bloomer. And you can see that once you get a big tall scape, depending on how far away you are from the window, you will get at least 2 flowers, sometimes 4, sometimes even 6. So in terms of your upkeep, you get these drying leaves, and just as they dry, either you can start pulling them off, or you can find the ones that have wilted completely, like this, and just grab them by the tail or rip them in the middle and remove them. And the same thing with the spent flowers. The spent flowers are important to remove, and they crack open at the very top, like that, and then you've cleaned up. Now, if you've pollinated, which would be where these are now turned yellow and haven't stayed green, they would produce a slight pod. So I'll pull these out, and I'll show you one that's already bloomed quite a while ago and that successfully produced self-seed. And that is the pod of the developing amaryllis. This one didn't take, so this one we'll just take out from the side. And we might leave these. No matter what, we want the stem to dry naturally and give its food back to the mother plant. People worry too much about the repotting, but obviously the little babies have to be repotted, so the moms can be repotted as well. Among the many species, the main thing they can get is a virus that models them and keeps the bulbs small and keeps them from reproducing to make more offsets. But in terms of insects, the only thing that I control for is a little bit of that fluffy whitefly, the furry one, and then a little bit, sometimes you'll have thrips if you're letting them dry out too much, or mites. But really, these have had no treatment, so I'm glad to say these are organic hippeastrums or organic amaryllis.
Now, this brings up something that I often see, which is people get that box with that bulb and put them in just water.
Ooh, yeah.
Uh-oh, this sounds upsetting to you, Matthew. So tell me about that form of growing them.
So the companies will tell you that they grow without soil, they grow without substrate, and they grow without too much water, in fact. But really, to get them to be like this in the future, it's better to put them in soil. Treat them like a plant that could go inside, outside. Every plant likes being washed off by natural rainfall. And that's what I do with my plants. I keep them on a balcony. I move them out to the country. I have them for a bunch of reasons. And then they're almost like orchids. You bring them up to show, or in between some of the houseplants, they look great when they suddenly surprise you and you didn't see that they were sending up a stem of flowers and they got all the flowers that you want. I also think they're really great for teaching about flowering plants, because they're typical of the grass families. They have of any Amaryllidaceae, which is the right family for the hippeastrums. They have the 6 parts. They always have parts in 3, okay? And so they're more related to the grasses than they are to other flowering plants. So I think that explains their good resistance. You know, I've had gardenias go down in a month and a half, but these will survive. These have survived. Some from 4 years and some up to 6 years, or maybe even 7 so far.
Well, I am just fascinated now by this wonderful flower and plant that I have misnamed and miscared for so many years. And next time you see one of these, just imagine all of the many countries it grows in and that you can grow it in your living room. Well, thank you so much for watching. And if you liked this video, you're going to love everything else that we have in our archives and running currently. In fact, you're going to see home tours, you're going to see specialty gardens, you're going to learn tips that will just blow you away as you end up with a better garden because of it. So please go to our channel, click subscribe, and continue watching. See you next time.